Okay, my name is Melvin Jeter. I'm at Illinois Wesleyan University. Prior to that, I was at the University of Southern Mississippi. I've taught high school through graduate level math courses. I've been teaching since 1964. A little math problem, you can figure out how old that is. Pretty good for somebody 39 years of age. The reason I'm giving a talk today, there was a call that went out about assessing students in more type classes. And since that was a problem I faced several years ago and I wasn't quite for sure how to do it, I'll tell you my solution. I was introduced to the Moore method at two wonderful schools, University of North Texas, which used to be called North Texas State University, and at Oklahoma State University. So that's my background. I teach currently 4 courses using the Moore method. One's a Techniques of Proof class, which is a sophomore level course designed to teach people how to create and write mathematics. The next course is Topology, which is kind of the ultimate course to teach the Moore method in, I think. Then I teach a course called Topics in Geometry, which is similar to a 2-course sequence I had at Oklahoma State University. And just recently I started doing Calculus 3 the Moore way. And in Calculus 3 we do sequences in series. We have a 4-course calculus sequence, and that's usually a tough course for students. I pretty well do the Moore method the way I had it at North Texas and Oklahoma State, which I think is quite a bit different than some of the applications today. I've called it the Moore method, I've called it the modified Moore method, the discovery method, the IBL method, the Texas method. My students prefer the Texas method, maybe because I wear boots a lot in class. But my students refer to it as the Texas method. It's fairly popular, and we get really good feedback when we have alumni and other kinds of surveys like program reviews. I will show you a syllabus from one of the courses just to give you an idea of what the courses are like. I picked on the geometry course. They all differ just a little bit. But I'll just run through this very quickly. The topology course and the geometry course are 2 of 5 courses that seniors at Illinois Wesleyan have to take. We have five of these courses, and they have to take 2 of them. And so that's where the topology and the geometry fall. The Techniques of Proof is a course they take as sophomores, and so would be the Calculus 3 course. I don't lecture in class. My role in that class is to kind of oversee a large group research effort. I do not allow my students to talk to one another outside of class, to read a textbook, or to go on the internet. We define that as plagiarism. If you present a work in class, with the exception of Calculus 3. If you present a piece of work in class and you got that from some other source, that's considered plagiarism. It could get you reported to the provost or the associate provost of the university and removed from the university. So that's quite different. This is more the way the course was whenever I had it. Everybody had to participate by producing their own result. The objective of the course is not to cover a bunch of material. The objective of the course is to try to convince students there's more power in the ability to create than in the ability to reproduce. And so what I hope to do in all of my students is convince them that they have the power within themselves to create mathematics. An important aspect of this is working on difficult problems for long periods of time. I don't give a lot of problems that are 30-minute problems or hour problems. I have students work for long periods of time. One of the things I do different than what we had at North Texas and Oklahoma State, I have gotten to the point where I hand out little booklets that have a list of problems that we're going to look at in the course. Some of the booklets are fairly thin, one's fairly thick. We never get through all of the problems. All of the courses start with some basic problems that just about everybody can do, so everybody has some success up front, usually naive set theory. So we get started like that, and then I let them branch out, and I will have students go all the way through the courses looking for areas to work on. So I may have one student working in one chapter of the geometry course, for example, where it's big enough there's several chapters, another student working in another chapter, and they just kind of spread out. They present their work in class. I try not to tell anybody that they have a bad result, that their work is wrong. That frustrates them. That was something I had to learn at an early age. You have somebody present a proof at the board, and it's good, and you accept them and accept the proof, and you congratulate them and set them down, and somebody else goes up and the proof is wrong, and you tell them it's wrong and set them down. That does not work. They don't understand why they're wrong. So the way I deal with that is I treat all of my Texas-style courses as formal writing courses. The Techniques of Proof is a formal writing course at the university. And by that I mean I stress the importance of proper use of language. I don't allow shorthand, and I don't allow terminology from symbolic logic either. They have to write the proofs in a form like they would expect to see in a textbook. I've found that students who use language carefully enough usually understand and can do the proofs. If they can't write the proof down properly, they probably didn't understand the proof. The way the class functions as a group is that students present their proofs in class, and I put the responsibility as much as possible on the backs of the students to accept the proofs. So they're to go through every single sentence and make sure that clicks in their mind as being correct. And if it's not, they're supposed to challenge. If somebody has an incorrect proof up, eventually a student will start asking for some explanation, and before long the presenter discovers that he or she doesn't quite have it together and has more work to be done. If a student shows some promise on the problem, I'll give them another opportunity to present it. Again, I try to put the responsibility on the other members of the class, and this is where the group thing comes in. You have to sell your result to your peers in that class. You have to communicate it both in oral form and written form in a way that people understand it and can accept it. And that's the ground rules of the class. I rarely give a midterm. When I would give a midterm if I was having a very bad class and I didn't have any results at midterm to really base grades on. At the end of the semester, I give them their grade at the time of the last class period. And I give them the option. You can take this as your final grade in the class, or you can take a final exam with the hopes of raising this grade. I've tried various ways of doing the final exam. I tried the British way. You can either have the course grade or you can have the final exam grade. I got basically the same results. I don't like that. Sometimes I will give them a test, and there'll be about 3 sections of problems. One will deal with definitions, examples and counterexamples. One will be problems, proofs that they've already seen in class, and another will be theorems that they have not seen in class. And I will tell them, you may attempt no more than 15 points, and I'll have the problems weighted. You may attempt no more than 15 points or no more than X number of problems, because I want you to concentrate and give me a good piece of work. I don't want a bunch of partial starts. I want a good, complete piece of work. I try to instill in my students the idea that this is an opportunity for them, and that if somebody tells them how to do a proof, and in class, whenever somebody finds a flaw in a proof, I will not let that student suggest to the presenter how to correct the proof. They can tell them what they're troubled by, and when what they think is wrong, but they can't tell them how to correct it. I try to instill in my students the idea that if somebody helps you, they're stealing an opportunity from you, and that includes me. I do allow them to talk to me outside of class. If I have to give hints to get them started, that lowers the value of the problem. Now, I grade the problems 1 to 5 points, depending on the level of difficulty of the problem and how well it's presented, and if they got it the first time or if they had to rewrite it. I have a lot of rewrites. Somebody will have basically a good proof, but somebody in class will point out a little error where the writing's a little bit rough or something like that, and we will make them rewrite it. I collect all of the proofs once they're accepted, and I make copies and give back to my students so that they don't waste time taking notes in class. They will get a correct copy of every proof that's been accepted in class. I also try to sell the idea that a mistake, while you certainly don't like mistakes and you don't want to get to the point where you accept mistakes, a mistake is a real opportunity. Some of the best publications I have came about because of a mistake. My research partner and I, we never talked together, we just handed paper back and forth. And one of us did a proof of some little problem that was nice, but it wasn't worthy of publication, and the proof had a little mistake in it, and the other one caught the mistake. And in trying to correct the mistake, we discovered a class of matrices that turned out to be fairly significant. We got some papers and some good recognition from that. A mistake is an opportunity. If a student asks a dumb question in class, I don't allow any rudeness in class, but if a student asks a dumb question, we don't tell them it's a dumb question. I'll say, that's interesting. And I'll add it on as a conjecture. Conjecture, Paul Kapitsa says, and I'll give them Paul's conjecture. Usually that student will come back the next class period with a proof or a counterexample. If it's a dumb question, they're usually the first ones to find out what's wrong. But we don't tell them. We turn it back as a question. I do put some false results in these notes, and I warn them, some of the results are false. And a trick I learned at a meeting several years ago, an R.L. Moore meeting, is you tell them, if the class accepts a false proof in class, that will be on the final exam. I've never done it, but the threat's good enough. I also tell them that attendance is important and that I will reserve the right to lower the grade, 1-letter grade, for every unexcused absence over 3. I don't use the rule, but it's there as a threat. There's been a couple of times I should have used the rule, but it's there as a threat. When I leave that out of the syllabus, then I have more people cutting. So I found it's best to be a little bit nasty and put it in the syllabus. I try to be very patient with students. Students develop at different rates, and you never know, so you just have to be very patient. I'll finish real quick. Had a sophomore this year, scared to death to enroll in topics in geometry, the most difficult of the courses I teach. She hadn't had topology. She's in with a bunch of people that have had topology, including the best math major we had as a senior. She was scared to death. She ended up with the top grade in the class, and she attacked the problems that had topology in there. She had more points total than the next 2 people that made A's. Of the top 3 A's in the class, this girl had more points total than the 2 competitors behind her, and she's a sophomore. And one of those competitors was the best student and graduating senior at Illinois Wesleyan, I think, this last year, and will be working on a PhD in the fall. He's operating on at least a first or second year graduate level. She's standing up, so I ran out of time. I didn't look at my notes. I'm sorry.
We still have time for questions.
Okay, any questions? Yes.
One of the challenges that I've found when I'm having students present their work and then I want the rest of the class to evaluate and critique that work is somehow motivating the students in the class to do a really good job and all participate in critiquing the work of a fellow student on the board. I find they're pretty shy about doing it. They don't put enough into really being critical of it. How do you deal with, you may have alluded to this, but how do you really get the class to be very serious in critiquing the work that's put on the blackboard from another student?
I try to use a lot of humor. I try to convince them that I'm a mind reader because I'll say, well, Stacy, I can see you have a question. What is the question? And Stacy will start trying to figure out what question I read in her eyes, and she'll come up with a question. I do things like that, or I will pick on another student and say, are you willing to bet your grade on the course that this proof is right? And frequently, I will take a correct proof, a beautiful proof, and they're scratching their head. This guy's asked this question, something's wrong. And you know, after a while, well, it looks right. Okay, you won, you know, you've won that bet. I do things like that. And again, the encouragement that if you accept a bogus proof, that it will be on the final exam. By the way, most of my students do not take the final exam. And I will guarantee you, I know my students better with this method than in my traditional classes where I give 2 tests and a final exam. And then I give pop quizzes in my regular classes, daily pop quizzes. So a lot of testing and all. I know my students better from the Texas courses than I do the other courses. And it's the Texas courses that always come back 10 or 20 years later when somebody comes back to campus. They're the courses that they remember and have positive things. And I've heard this, and I'll close with this. An actuary from Country Companies Insurance, the technical director of the Atlantic Falcons, and several others have made virtually the same statement. While we don't use topology or topics in geometry at Country Companies Insurance or at the Atlanta Falcons, we don't use those. It's what I learned in these classes. It's what enables me to do my job. And the outstanding alumni at Illinois Wesleyan University this year is Carl Pierberg, who is the technical director of the Atlantic Falcons, double math CS major from Illinois Wesleyan. And he lists, it was either topology or techniques, is either the geometry or the topology course as being the course where he learned the skills that he uses every day with the Atlantic Falcons. You should like that. You're a Falcons fan? No, okay. I'm through.
Hi, Dr. Jeter.
Hi.
You said you stressed the importance of the proper use of language, and of course,
Yes.
that is absolutely crucial. Would you elaborate on how you train your students to properly use language?
The way I do this, at Illinois Wesleyan University, for the courses that carry formal reasoning, students are supposed to do a number of rewrites, 3 or 4 rewrites, and then write up a paper, and they're supposed to have several different, some total number of pages of rewrites like that. I don't do it that way, and I tell them if they don't like the way I'm doing it, somebody else can do it. I do the rewrites at the board. I have presentations at the board. And if the writing is not good enough, if the language is not good enough, I get the classmates to explain what's going on, why they don't understand. Sometimes when I have an opportunity, I'll say, oh, I think, let me see, you're saying this, and I'll write it down correctly, but I don't tell them what I'm doing. And by the way, I never show them a slick proof after they've done their proof. That just cheapens their work. Sometimes I will drop a hint someday when nobody's got anything up. I'll start talking about something, and I'll put some little example up that's tied with something further on in the course. But I don't tie it directly to that. But that's how I do that. Instead of doing rewrites, we just do the rewrites at the board. It's kind of time consuming, but I think you learn from other people. And I think it's a waste of time to have everybody doing rewrites and you're grading all of that. You read other people's work and you see where they had trouble and where they had success, and you can adopt some of that yourself.